Somewhere on Earth, right now, there may be an object that struck men dead if they touched it. An object that destroyed armies. An object that the most powerful kings in the ancient world were willing to sacrifice everything to control. An ancient wooden box, covered in gold. And then one day, roughly 2,600 years ago, it disappeared. Not stolen, not lost at sea, not destroyed in a moment anyone recorded. It just stopped being mentioned. And in 3 millennia of searching, no one has found it. Not archaeologists, not governments, not the most sophisticated technology available to the modern world. Nothing. What happened to the Ark of the Covenant? What was it? The Ark was not mythology. It has dimensions, materials, a construction record, detailed accounts of what happened to people who got too close, a chest of acacia wood, 4 feet long, covered entirely in gold, inside and out. On its lid, 2 golden angels facing each other, wings spread, creating a canopy above the tablets inside. According to the Book of Numbers, 3 objects were placed inside: the 10 Commandments, a jar of manna, and the staff of Aaron, a dead wooden rod that had produced living almonds as a sign of divine favor. A dead stick growing fresh fruit, sealed inside a box with the words of God. But here is something that rarely gets mentioned. The Ark is not only in the Hebrew Bible, it appears in the Quran, called the Tabut, described as containing Sakina, divine peace from God Himself. Islam regards the Ark as real, as significant, as divinely sanctioned, which means the question of where it is doesn't just belong to one religion. It belongs to 3 of the world's major faiths simultaneously. And all 3 would interpret its discovery through completely different and incompatible frameworks. The Ark, in other words, is not just lost. It is politically impossible to find, which may be part of why it has stayed so carefully hidden. But before we get to where it went, you need to understand what it actually did, what it did to people. The stories about the Ark's power are not subtle. The Philistines captured the Ark in battle and brought it to the city of Ashdod. They placed it in the temple of their god Dagon. The next morning, Dagon's statue was found, face down on the floor. They stood it back up. The morning after, face down again, head and hands broken off. Then plague broke out in Ashdod. Then, in the next city, the Ark was moved to. Then the next. The Philistines sent the Ark back to Israel on a cart with golden offerings, desperate to be rid of it. When it arrived at Beth Shemesh, some locals looked inside out of curiosity. 70 of them died. Later, a man named Uzzah reached out to steady the Ark when the cart hit a rough patch of road. He dropped dead immediately. The text is matter-of-fact about it. No dramatic build-up. No explanation. Uzzah grabbed the Ark and died. King David was so frightened he refused to bring it into Jerusalem for 3 months. When he finally did, he danced before it, scandalously, in the streets. His wife criticized his undignified behavior. The text says she was struck barren. The Ark demanded total, terrified, joyful engagement. Half measures were not tolerated. Now, researchers working at the intersection of physics and archaeology have proposed something unusual. The Ark's specific construction, 2 layers of gold, separated by an insulating layer of acacia wood, with gold poles and the 2 golden cherubim facing each other across a gap, shares structural characteristics with a capacitor. Gold-covered wood, dry desert air, a design capable, in theory, of generating and storing static electrical charge. This is not mainstream science. The calculations have not satisfied any physicist. But the deaths are documented. The fear was real. And Uzzah's death, so immediate that it frightened a king, reads less like a symbolic narrative and more like a description of something witnessed. Whatever was in that box, the ancient world treated it as genuinely dangerous. And then it was gone. The disappearance. King Solomon built the first temple in Jerusalem around 960 BCE. The innermost room, the Holy of Holies, was designed specifically to house the Ark. No windows, pure cedar and gold, accessible only to the high priest and only on one day per year. When the priests carried the Ark in, a cloud so thick it filled the temple. The priests couldn't continue their service. This is where the Ark's documented history peaks, and almost exactly where it ends. In 586 BCE, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar destroys Jerusalem. His army burns the city and systematically dismantles the temple. The account in 2 Kings lists everything taken or destroyed: bronze pillars, basins, ladles, lampstands, gold, silver. It is a meticulous inventory, the kind a conquering army keeps to account for every item of value. And the Ark of the Covenant is not on it, not destroyed, not taken, not mentioned at all. The Babylonians were obsessive record keepers. If they'd found and destroyed the most sacred object of a conquered people, a famous object whose power was known across the ancient Near East, you'd expect at least a line. There isn't one, which means either it was destroyed so completely that no one bothered to record it, or it wasn't there when they arrived. But here is the detail that makes this stranger. The Second Temple was rebuilt in 516 BCE. For the next 500 years, the high priest would enter the Holy of Holies once a year on the Day of Atonement, and find an empty room. For 5 centuries, the holiest room in Judaism contained nothing. The Romans, when they finally breached the temple in 70 CE, apparently expected to find something of enormous significance inside the inner sanctum. The historian Tacitus records that they were puzzled to find it empty. An empty room, at the center of the most sacred temple in the world. The Ark wasn't there when the Babylonians came. It wasn't there when the Romans came. Where was it for all of those centuries? And where is it now? 5 theories. There are 5 serious candidates. Each one points somewhere different, and none of them can be ruled out. Theory 1, destroyed by the Babylonians. The simplest explanation: they burned the temple. Everything burned. The Ark, wood and gold, was consumed. But the Babylonians kept meticulous records. They cataloged everything. No Babylonian text says, "We destroyed the Ark," or "We took it." The silence is either evidence of destruction or evidence that it wasn't there. Theory 2, hidden beneath Jerusalem. There is a text called the Copper Scroll, found among the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1952. Unlike the others, written on leather, this one is inscribed on copper. It is a list of hiding places for enormous quantities of gold, silver, and sacred objects. The locations are described in vague terms: landmarks that may no longer exist, distances that can't be precisely converted. None of the hiding places have ever been found. Whether the Ark was among the objects listed, whether it was hidden before the Babylonians arrived or before the Romans, the Copper Scroll points to a network of hidden treasure beneath Jerusalem that no one has reached. Because the site that once held Solomon's temple is now occupied by the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Archaeological excavation is politically impossible. But ground-penetrating radar has confirmed that the underground of the Temple Mount is not empty. There are rooms down there, passages, chambers built upon chambers, connecting areas separated by hundreds of meters of bedrock. No one knows what's in them. No one is allowed to look. Theory 3. Taken by Egypt before Babylon arrived. About 925 BCE, 60 years before Nebuchadnezzar, an Egyptian pharaoh named Shishak sacked Jerusalem. The Bible says he took the treasures of the house of the Lord. The phrase is vague. It might include the ark. It might not. If the ark was already in Egypt when Babylon arrived, that would explain its absence from the Babylonian inventory. And Egypt is a country with thousands of years of undiscovered tombs, temples, and sealed chambers. Something to consider. Theory 4. Hidden by priests before the invasion. There is a passage in 2 Chronicles that almost every Ark researcher eventually finds their way to. During King Josiah's religious reforms, just decades before the Babylonian conquest, he commanded the Levites to put the Holy Ark in the house which Solomon built. Put it back. Not keep it there. Not ensure it remains. Put it back in, which implies it had already been taken out. Who took it? Why? Where it went? The text says nothing. But a 2nd century Jewish text, called 2nd Maccabees, claims the prophet Jeremiah hid the ark in a cave on Mount Nebo before the invasion. When followers tried to find the path, they couldn't. Jeremiah told them it would remain hidden until God gathered his people together. And then Jeremiah himself, possibly the same prophet who hid the ark, wrote this: "In the future, people will not say, 'The ark of the covenant of the Lord.' It shall not come to mind. They shall not remember it. They shall not miss it. They shall not make another one." A prophet who may have hidden the most sacred object in the religion, telling his people not to bother looking for it. What does he know? What did he do? Theory 5. Taken to Ethiopia as a refugee. The Ethiopian tradition says the ark never left Giza. It was never in Jerusalem when the Babylonians came, because it had left centuries earlier. According to the Kebra Nagast, the Ethiopian national epic, the Queen of Sheba was an Ethiopian queen named Makeda. She visited Solomon. She returned home pregnant. Her son Menelik grew up, traveled to Jerusalem to meet his father, and when he returned to Ethiopia, the young priests who accompanied him brought the ark. Not stolen, they carried it themselves, replacing it with a replica in the Holy of Holies. The real ark went south, into Africa, and a different version of this tradition makes it stranger still. Some Ethiopian oral histories say the ark didn't come with Menelik at the height of Solomon's reign. It came later, during the reign of Manasseh, when a corrupt king introduced idol worship into the temple, and faithful priests smuggled the ark out for safekeeping. In this version, the ark didn't arrive in Ethiopia as a trophy. It arrived as a refugee, hidden by people who knew what was coming, placed in safekeeping until the danger passed. The danger never passed, and the ark never came back. So where is it now? The chapel in Axum, in the city of Axum, in northern Ethiopia, there is a small chapel. It is called the Chapel of the Tablet, adjacent to the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims the Ark of the Covenant is inside, not metaphorically, physically, right now. And the chapel is guarded by a single monk, the guardian of the Ark, who is chosen for life, lives on the grounds, and is never permitted to leave. He is the only person allowed to enter the chapel. Not tourists, not religious officials, not heads of state, not scientists. No one. In recent years, the Guardian has spoken publicly about his role. He has said the object causes him suffering, that it is something that cannot be fully comprehended. The Church does not permit verification. The Ethiopian government does not press the matter. And here is what makes this more than a local religious tradition. The connection between ancient Israel and ancient Ethiopia is not invented. Jewish communities have existed in Ethiopia since antiquity. The Beta Israel, Ethiopian Jews, maintained practices that suggest contact with ancient Israelite religion, so early they predate the Babylonian exile. And there is this. In the 1990s, a professor of Jewish studies named Tudor Parfit tracked down a sacred object belonging to the Lemba people of Zimbabwe, a group with oral traditions that mirror ancient Israelite religious practice. The object, called the Ngoma Lungundu, is described in Lemba tradition exactly as the Ark is described in the Bible, a wooden container of divine power, carried before the people in war, capable of striking people dead who approached incorrectly. Parfit had it analyzed. The wooden elements dated to around 1350 CE, too recent to be the Ark itself, but consistent with a copy made from memory of an older original. Then, DNA testing revealed something that rewrote the story. The Lemba's priestly clan, the Buba, carries the Cohen modal haplotype, a genetic marker found almost exclusively in men who trace their ancestry to the ancient Jewish priesthood. The Lemba have genetic, documentable connections to ancient Israelite priestly lineages. Their connection to ancient Israel is not mythology. It is biology. And the Ngoma they carry, whatever its origins, connects directly back to Jerusalem, through paths that no one has fully traced, which raises the question that no one has fully answered. If the Lemba lost the original and built a copy from memory, where did the original go? The question that makes everything harder. If the Ark is somewhere, in Ethiopia, under Jerusalem, in Egypt, in a cave on Mount Nebo, what happens when it's found? This is not a rhetorical question. The Temple Mount is already the most contested piece of real estate on Earth. Wars have been fought over access to it. People die over it regularly. If the Ark were discovered tomorrow, a specific and significant community of religious believers holds that its discovery would create an obligation to rebuild the temple on the Temple Mount, where the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque currently stand. The implications are not theoretical, they are catastrophic, which means that some of the people who know the most about where the Ark might be have every reason to make sure it is never publicly found. Some secrets are kept not because the secret keepers want power, but because they understand what would happen if the secret came out. The chapel is still locked in Axum right now. A man is sitting in a compound. He has dedicated his life, his entire life, to guarding a single object. He cannot leave. He has no family, no career, no ordinary human life. He has only the object, and the absolute conviction that what he guards is real. Is he guarding the Ark of the Covenant? Is he guarding a replica so sacred it has acquired the weight of the original? Or is he guarding a tradition, a sacred fiction maintained so long it has become indistinguishable from truth? No one outside that chapel knows, and the chapel is locked. Beneath the Temple Mount In chambers that may not have been entered since 70 CE, there are rooms. We know they exist. What is in them, nobody knows. No living person can say. And the political situation on the Temple Mount means no one is going to find out anytime soon. The Ark has been missing for more than 2,500 years. The entire sweep of Western civilization, ancient Greece, Rome, the Islamic Caliphate, the Renaissance, the Space Age, all of that happened in the time since the Ark was last verifiably mentioned. And in all of that time, no one has produced it. No one has opened the chapel. No one has emerged from beneath the Temple Mount with evidence. Maybe they never will. Maybe the Ark is gone. Its gold melted down centuries ago, its wood turned to dust. Or maybe it is still there, somewhere, intact, waiting for someone humble enough and patient enough and brave enough to find it, and to understand what it means that it was hidden, and from whom, and why. The question is still open. It has been open for 2,600 years, and the silence that surrounds it, the silence of a sealed chapel in Ethiopia, the silence of unexcavated rooms beneath Jerusalem, the silence of a prophet who said, "Don't worry about it," and then said nothing more. That silence is not emptiness. It is the most loaded silence in human history.